68, an all-encompassing digital network of podcasts, live streams, and newsletters that cover the sport at every level on every platform. SiriusXM, Channel 84.
You are watching the Field of 68. For the first time, our network brings you a live game broadcast. Mike Bothwell for the win! Oh!
This is Reese Pearl.
Sean Shire.
Sean Miller.
I love the Field of 68.
I listen to you guys every morning.
Are we still live?
UConn wasn't on my radar.
From the bluest of the blue bloods to the smallest of the mid-majors, the only way to keep up with college basketball is through the Field of 68.
Welcome into Floyd Street's Finest. I am not Jeff Greer. Jeff Greer is here, though, but I am not Jeff Greer. I am Jack Grossman, joined by Coach Mark Liebermann and, of course, Jeff Greer here on a new season, a new edition, a new version of Floyd Street's Finest here on the Field of 68 Media Network. Super excited to be here. Why am I the one talking today instead of just producing or talking? Well, we're going to have a little bit of a new feel this year on Floyd Street's Finest. Basically, I'll let Jeff probably take the reins here, let him explain in his words. But basically, we're having a little bit of a passing of the baton here on Floyd Street's Finest. Something I couldn't be more excited about. But Jeff, I'll go ahead and let you, take it away here.
As another man with great hair once said, the torch has been passed to a new generation. I am getting a haircut today. It's gotten a little poofy.
I don't believe you.
I didn't realize how poofy it was until I sat on this Zoom with you guys. No, I'm really excited for this next step for Floyd Street's Finest. As you guys know from our previous episodes, I had always been pushing my newsletter as well that I had for a couple of years. Life happens. And having a toddler at home, having a full-time day job that requires a lot of travel, a lot of odd hours, just was not feasible to maintain the newsletter. And as we have gone along, we realized I can't give you what I want to give you, which is wall-to-wall podcasting all the time, weekly. So Jack has taken the reins. I will still be popping on every now and then. I don't want to be the weirdo dad lingering on my old show. So Jack will have me as is needed. And I know having Mark here, I'm sure Mark will be a regular guest as well. So we'll make sure to have a good rotating group of folks supporting Jack, but the show's in capable hands and Jack is going to take this thing and run with it this year and beyond. So there you go.
Thanks, Jeff. I know. No, go ahead, Coach.
Well, I was just going to say, just hovering like Huggy Bear at the West Virginia game as well. So, yeah. Not a good look.
That was great. I saw that. I was like, that's not ideal. But
it's a little cringeworthy.
Yeah,
it's okay.
More uncomfortable than a tight sweater on Thanksgiving.
Correct.
Ooh.
Well played.
Yeah, you never want that. But anyways, Jeff has obviously been phenomenal the past couple of years. He's let me, stick around and produce the past couple of years, and I couldn't be more excited to have the opportunity to take over. For those who don't know me, grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, went to DuPont Manual High School, went to probably 150 Louisville games growing up. So I grew up obsessed with the program, and that grew into an obsession with college basketball. Went to Indiana University, did podcasting, broadcasts, worked with the Suit radio station, among other things there. Worked for ESPN Louisville for a couple years, producing, hosting, doing a bunch of different stuff there. Covered Kentucky games of all things, something I never thought I would be doing growing up, but a lot of fun nevertheless. And since January, I've been working in Atlanta for a company called Hawkeye Innovations, a sports technology company in their baseball and now basketball departments. So that's been very different. We can talk about that another time, but I could not be more excited to be jumping back into the media realm fully here, doing it. And I think a very perfect setup for me to be able to do this from Atlanta, to do this with someone like, Coach Liebermann, who I really, really am excited to get to work with, and to have the opportunity that Rob Doster and Goodman and really you, Jeff, have given me here. So I'm super, super excited to get started, and really, really grateful for the opportunity, and just really excited to get started. So, Coach, I'm sure most people know who you are, but you want to just introduce yourself, who you are, kind of where you've been through here, then we'll get into the mess of what happened on Monday night here in Louisville.
Well, first, I'm retro 1990s with the earphone earbud.
Love it.
Actually, the wire, while you guys got the really advanced big time headset.
I got a wire. Don't worry.
I got a wire. We're all wired up. We're okay.
Like everything else, though, they can't see yours; they can see mine. So, coached at Monsignor Pace for 12 years. Was lucky enough to coach some really good players. Coached the McDonald's All-American game. Then went to work for Coach Patino. Was an assistant for 2 years on his staff when we went to the Final Four. Coached at Southeastern Louisiana. Coached at FIU. Was the associate head coach of both places. Moved back to Louisville to be around my 9-year-old daughter, and happy to be back, and now doing some stuff with ESPN Radio, and got a chance to broadcast one of the games, be the analyst for the radio show. For the radio broadcast. So yeah, excited to be here, and Jeff's been a good friend of mine for a bunch of years. He's a wonderful writer, and got to know Jack through ESPN as well. So hey, let's do this.
Absolutely. And of course, when I envisioned this, I was like, okay, Wednesday before the season starts, we can react to the exhibitions a little bit, do a little bit of, big picture. What do they need to do to have a successful season? What does Kenny Payne need to do? And then they lay a massive egg against Kentucky Wesleyan. Second year in a row, Louisville's lost to a D2 program. I do want to get to all the big picture stuff, but considering where this might head for the rest of the year, I'm not sure how many chances we'll get to actually break down what happened in a game, because people will be mad at what happened in a game or happy about it. Things do happen. So I do want to just cover kind of what went wrong for Louisville in this game, especially also because it is so early in the season. It's, even though they lost and it's bad, it technically doesn't go against the win-loss record. So if you're optimistic, you can say, well, there's time to still get it together. They can still improve all that stuff. So I do want to look at a couple different things. The first thing, obviously, and I'll throw this to one of you guys. How the heck does a Division II team outscore an ACC team 18-2 in second chance points and out-rebound them by 14? How does that happen?
Well, one thing is, if you're going to have guys on the floor, and there's two schools of thought. Either you're an absolute beast and you're obsessed with rebounding and you rebound out of your area and it doesn't matter, you don't have to hit guys, you're just going to go get it, or you're going to be a physical team and you're going to hit other bodies. And I have always used the term car crash rather than box outs, because I want it to be as physical as possible. And if you notice during this game, the second chance points, a lot of times on long shots, it's going to be long rebounds, and it's something it's taught to players. You watch the Louisville team. Every time a three was taken, their first step was towards the basket. It's innate. It's normal. It happens. But you got to teach the opposite. You got to teach, hey, on a long shot, I'm stepping towards the guy I'm guarding. I'm trying to hit him. If he's going to release and get back in transition, that's fine. I'm in great position to get that long rebound. And so that didn't happen. There's a lot of shots that went over their head. Doesn't matter your size. When you take that initial step in, it can really hurt you on the offensive rebounding for your opponent.
So is it as simple as just Wesleyan took a lot of long shots, a lot of three-pointers, a lot of deep jumpers, missed a bunch of them because they did only shoot like 30% in the game, which again leads to like, how do you lose to a D2 team that shoots 30% from the field? You give up a lot of offensive rebounds, but is there anything like, because I know a lot of people have been mad, Kenny Payne, even post-game with the talent quote, which we can get to that a little bit later, but talking about the effort. Is it purely an effort thing, or is it more, look, they're not drilling this correctly. They're not catching on to what they're trying to drill correctly.
Can I throw one thing out here, Mark,
absolutely,
that I think is really important. What you're talking about is like I mean, and you would say this yourself. I mean, that is a fundamental thing that you are taught. And I obviously, both of you know my stature as a human being obviously was never going to get past high school and AAU and travel basketball as a teenager, but we were taught how to pursue long rebounds and things like that at that age. Like these are basic basketball things that, yeah, I mean, you find a body, you box them out, you prevent long rebounds from hitting the floor. They should not be bouncing. They should not be something that in a 50-50 pursuit. First of all, there shouldn't be a 50-50 pursuit if a team is fundamentally rebounding the way they should be, and physical, the fundamentals of physicality following that, one. And two, if there is a 50-50 battle and you're the defensive team and you just, and I realize the game has changed significantly, but you probably view it as a win if you get a jump shot. If you get a missed jump shot on a defensive possession, that's a win most of the time. And, barring a 50% 3-point shooter, 40% 3-point shooter being wide open in the corner, a lot of those times you're saying, okay, this is a win defensively for me. Go get the rebound. I mean, I realize I sound like just an old dude shouting from the stands, but sometimes like that's the most fundamental thing that a good team, even an average team should be able to do is you play defense for X number of seconds through the shot clock. You force a jump shot, you go get the rebound. That's a win. I know people, even to mention the name probably causes chills down people's spines, which probably is a little bit of an overreaction, but that was something that Chris Mack talked a lot about when he was teaching the pack line, the hybrid pack line that he would teach is you get one shot and your team wins in that possession. If you force a jump shot, it's contested, or at least it's a tough jump shot, you go get the rebound. I mean, that's a basic fundamental thing. And if you're not doing that against Kentucky Wesleyan, we can't have a conversation about just a game, because that is a symptom of a much larger problem to me. And I think that's where this conversation, unfortunately, feels like every conversation about Louisville is headed at this point and has been for a year, is you can't just talk about one game because it feels like it's a symptom of a much larger problem.
And I think the best example of that, I mean, take 5-minute mark. You're not in an ideal spot. You're trailing 50-49, but you still, at that point, you have a very good chance of winning the game. You're down one. Kentucky Wesleyan misses a free throw, and you talk about high school stuff. I remember playing elementary school basketball. The one sin you could not do is give up an offensive rebound off of a missed free throw. And Louisville gives up an offensive rebound, kick out three. Wesleyan hits it, 4-point game. You look at the next 6 defensive possessions. Other than a possession where they got a steal and a layup, you had one of the following happen on every single possession. A miscommunication for a wide open 3, an offensive rebound, a Sky Clark missing, not being able to stay in front of his man, giving up a straight line drive, leading to another wide open 3, or the combination of JJ Traynor, Mike James, and Trey White. I'm not going to go in detail every single possession, but I did chart all these possessions of those 3 guys having either a miscommunication or a defensive breakdown leading to a dude being wide open. So even though in the next 4.5 minutes, Louisville scored 8 points, instead of being down 1, they found themselves down 62-57 with 1:37 left. And I'm looking there watching this game like, these are all incredibly simple things. Like JJ Traynor, there's a dude wide open under the basket. You got to rotate over and cover him. Sky Clark, you need to stay in front of your man to keep the defense from collapsing. You got to grab an offensive rebound off of a missed free throw. And I look at all those things, and as you said, Jeff, it's a microcosm of what's gone wrong with this program the last couple years. When you get down to it, when you need to get stops, you're making stupid, silly mental mistakes that a 4th or 5th grade basketball coach would be getting on you about.
Well, to Jeff's point, and he's exactly right. I mean, the Riley quote: "No rebounds, no rings." I mean, I could break down every meticulous detail as far as even when you were talking, Jack, about the free throws. You want your feet pointed towards, you're the guy that you're going to hit, and your hands need to be above your elbows. So there's a bunch of little things from a standpoint, but it's not what you teach; it's what you emphasize. And for me, that's something that is ingrained. Like and this harks back exactly, Jeff, to and Jack, what I truly believe. When you don't have an identity, when you don't have something that your team just intrinsically believes in, and it says, okay, we are going to get a stop. You mentioned tough twos is what we all as coaches, we want to force tough twos. And then what we do is we call it finishing the job, which is finish the job. Every day that's emphasized. When I'm coaching, it's emphasized. Finish the job. Finishing the job is rebounding the basketball out of your area, hitting, scrappiness, coming up with it. That the signs of toughness that you talked about, it's a buzzword and everything. That's toughness. Find a way to come up with that rebound. You want to hit, you want to car crash, you want to take a step back, you want to understand where shots are coming from. You have to understand that's finishing the job. And that's the part on the defensive end that they really struggle on, is finishing the job. And it doesn't seem like there's guys that inherently just understand, okay, we don't have Dennis Rodman, who's just going to clean up every board. You're not going to expect Dennis Evans at his size. He's not going to be able to hold his ground. He's going to be, physically, he's going to be moved. He's not going to be able to seal guys. His length is going to bother people. I just don't think he's going to be a great rebounder this year, not because of effort, just because of physicality. So you have to have guys that will just absolutely get in there. And as a coach, you don't take out players off the floor who rebound the basketball. So, that was a big thing. Obviously, the long shots and long rebounds. But there's a deeper issue there as far as understanding, hey, we're forcing tough twos, we're forcing skips and fades, we're not allowing basket cuts. We are forcing you to take the shots that we are dictating to you. And and they couldn't get those they couldn't finish the job in the second half, especially late.
And one thing to throw out there, Mark, off that is, I know the quote that had everyone all upset about the talent level.
Mm-hmm.
That team to me rebounded like a team that thought it could just stick its arms up essentially and be bigger and more athletic than its opponent.
Yes.
And
yes.
you mentioned, having a kid like Dennis Evans, who is obviously a freak athlete at his size, but at the same time, he's not going to be able to stand there and clear out space and get low and push, the 6'7", 240 centers that he's going to come up against through the rest of his career. Even in the NBA, there's going to be guys who are still built that way, who are a little bit smaller, but they're physical, they're tough. And that's where your smaller, quote unquote, smaller players, your guys who are perimeter guys, your guys who are wings, that's where they need to step in and be willing to make up that extra effort and say, look, I might not be the guy who you're expecting to get 12 rebounds, but I'm going to be disruptive enough to help my guy who you think is going to get the 12 rebounds get 12 rebounds. And then I look, you look down the box score and you see 23 fouls drawn, you see 38 free throws attempted. So that tells me that this team is being physical on the other end. They're being physical enough on the other end to get to the free throw line. They're drawing fouls. Efficiency, folks across the country and across the world who care about that kind of stuff. That's great. That's a great number to me. Those are two great numbers. 23 fouls drawn, 38 free throws. That's really good. They made 31 of 38. And I know that was kind of a joking point through the course of the game on Monday night, was the amount of free throws. But if my team's going to get that many free throw attempts on one end of the floor, and maybe some of that is the advantage of talent and athleticism against an opponent that you should be able to draw some fouls against, Mark.
That's the thing, Jeff. Yeah, and I don't mean to interrupt your thought, but I believe that's a little bit of fool's gold, because a lot of those
could
free
be,
throws
it probably is.
Last 5 minutes, they're really attacking. Sky Clark, I think, shot 8 free throws in the last 4 minutes because he understood the sense, or he's just putting his head down and getting to the basket. And
But if you're,
they
but
won't
in that,
have,
but in that
Mhm.
point though, Mark, the sense of urgency, the attacking, that needs to be on both ends of the floor. That, you know, that's
no
the
question.
description
Yeah.
of attacking defensively
Mhm.
through the course of 40 minutes. That's more my
Right.
point. But yes, you're right. Probably a little bit of fool's gold, but it's still a nice number to look at, and you say, okay, this team has it in them somewhere to find that. So how do you extend that out to not when you're down 5 points to a D2 opponent in an exhibition game?
Well, I don't think they're going to get as many opportunities as the teams get better and the floor
Yes.
shrinks.
Yeah, that's
They're
fair.
not going
That's
to
fair.
have the gaps in the driving lanes, and there's going to be guys who will be able to wall up, to shot block, who are more athletic than the Kentucky Wesleyan. So the shots that they were getting to the line on won't be the same shots they're going to get in the ACC play against Texas, even against a UMBC in Chattanooga. So I think those things are going to go exponentially down. And to say that you're going to rely on, I understand for fans, that's a positive. Hey, we got to the free throw line. I just don't think they're going to get those opportunities against more athletic teams that can catch your move and keep you in front a lot better than Kentucky Wesleyan can.
And that's one of those things you look at, like even the Simmons College game where Louisville wins by 30, 40, 45 points. You look at that game, they go, okay, how much of that is they're actually better? How much of that is the talent they're playing? You could look at a thing like in that game, even though Louisville only turned it over 10 times in the Kentucky Wesleyan game, turning the ball over 22 times against a team like Simmons College, that is kind of enforcing, which gets reinforced with the issues we've talked about in the Wesleyan game of lack of, attention to detail, lack of effort, lack of doing the basic things you need to do to be a competent basketball team. So, Coach, you brought this up, even against a team like a UMBC or a Chattanooga or a Coppin State, even probably not as much Coppin State. I think they're somewhere in the 300s in KenPom, but UMBC and Chattanooga, especially, who I believe was in the NCAA tournament last year, is a pretty good mid-major program. What needs to change?
They are.
Yeah, what needs to change between now and the start of the season on Monday to where Louisville can get to where they need to be? Because let's face it, they need to win all three of those games. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They need to win all three of those games.
Well, the first thing about the turnovers, in this game, there was a more concerted effort to run through and to finish the end of their plays. What I mean by that is they weren't trying to make plays off the first or second pass like they did against Simmons, and they were dribbling into crowds instead of drawing crowds. The issue was for this game against Wesleyan, they were running through stuff. They were getting the ball, and the ball was not sticking, but they weren't reading the defense, so they ended up taking a contested shot rather than and they were just being so early with all their action instead of being late, reading the defense, reading a screen, setting good screens. So that really was why the turnovers went down, but they just weren't getting still good shots out of their offense. As far as going into the next few games, I would say the biggest thing, I've been saying that since the summer, and people were saying, well, exhibition games don't mean as much and so on. For this Louisville team, this game meant a lot because you want to say, okay, this is the product. No matter what you're doing in practice, no matter what you're doing behind the scenes, that's got to translate to the floor. And we haven't seen that. And it goes back to having an identity. And that's something you establish day one. What are you? Are we going to be the most physical team in the league? We're going to contest every shot. We're going to contest every dribble. We're going to contest every cut. You're not going to get a paint touch. We're going to limit you to 6 paint touches a game, if that. You're not, no layups. We're going to do all those type of things. I don't know what their identity is, and I don't think they know it going into these games. And that's the point where, as a coaching staff, you have to have a vision, and you have to understand this is what we have to do because we're now facing the upgrade of talent against teams that now feel they have a chance coming in here to win a basketball game. So I just think they have to establish who they are. I know that sounds kind of ambiguous or maybe even cryptic, but it's so important that your team knows this is what we want to do. This is how we're going to do it. And even on the offensive end, we want to make sure our first 3 possessions, we are force feeding the post, and we want to get maybe split action. And on defense, we are sprinting back, we're pointing, we're not giving up any easy baskets. And like I talked about, we're forcing, as and Jeff alluded to, we're forcing tough twos and we're car crashing. and then we're going to get out and run, which they have athleticism. They have talent. They do. And I think if they just haven't put that together or understand the whys of the game. And that's the part that's frustrating.
So there's a thing in journalism, Jack, and I'll be quick on this one because I'm sure you've got some thoughts to add to this too, obviously. But there was a thing that really helped me. It was a lesson that was kind of handed down to me by a veteran sports writer. I would be sitting on some feature story about something. I felt like I had a great little anecdote to kind of lead the story. And next thing I knew, I had written, however many words, and you're just sitting there and you're thinking, something doesn't feel right. So you stop what you're doing, you take a step back, you take a deep breath, and you say, what am I writing about? And you write one sentence, a paragraph, whatever. What is this story about? And I think you can apply that to most situations. It doesn't have to be writing a story. You could be digging a ditch and then you stop and stand back and say, okay, what are we doing? Well, you're actually bricklaying here. You're trying to lay a perimeter of bricks on your garden or whatever it is, right? And in this case, I think it's one of those things where that conversation, they just came back and they're like, at least from the outside looking in, because I'm not at practice every day. I'm not in their film sessions. I'm not in those conversations where they have team meetings and stuff like that. So I don't know. We don't know like what type of conversations they have as tone setting conversations, but it just, again, these are all symptoms. It feels like symptoms of something where they don't have a clear image of what it is. So to go back to, like we talked about, missing the rebounds, playing with some urgency towards the end. Yes, you're right. Maybe they aren't drawing those fouls against the Syracuses and the Pitts as the lights go out in the building, in the room that I'm sitting in. That is a motion sensor. That is embarrassing, and it's happened to me multiple times. Here we go. I'm back. But those are symptoms. Those are symptoms of something that is a larger issue, which is, to Mark's point, is that they're not quite sure what they are. And so we're looking at the start of the season and we're not even able to have a conversation about how do you build on whatever, because there have been those stumbles. Now, there have been teams that have recovered from exhibition losses. I think Syracuse lost an exhibition game a couple of years ago and ended up going to the NCAA tournament. I'm sure there are a billion other examples of that. So it's not impossible. But where the team, I think, maybe runs into some issues, and to Mark's point about not finishing or reading or thinking on their own at the end of a set, once they've run through everything, the shot clock's winding down, they didn't get the look they wanted. You've got players who are confident enough, who are savvy enough to know, okay, this is not a situation that we want to be taking a contested jump shot in. I understand what's asked of me enough to know now's our opportunity to show some of that organic chemistry that has developed over the summertime. I'm going to break this man down and find somebody a shot. I'm going to break this guy down and get my shot, whatever that is. The fact that we're not seeing that in these exhibition games is concerning. And so we're already to the conversation of they have to win X game. And again, I hope that nobody inside those walls is paying attention to any of it, but we all know that it's virtually impossible to put up all those walls and just keep working away at the things that are going to come back to you on film, because you can't go to Jimmy John's without hearing about whatever's going on with the Louisville basketball program in the city. So it's again, these are all symptoms of a larger issue. I know I'm hungry too. It's lunchtime, but
yes,
it's concerning, Jack, that it's like, okay, you just lost an exhibition game to a D2 opponent, and now we're talking about these must-win games that in previous years you're saying, yeah, my school paid $90,000 to play this game so that we could just run out and win by 30 and learn from wins, and it's unhealthy.
Yeah, I mean, both of you guys have brought it up, but the fact that Louisville was in a spot to where they could not lose an exhibition game. I'll compare it quickly to, because I know we're running out of time here, with Kentucky and Indiana, the two other, power conference local teams in the area. Kentucky leads Georgetown College by 1 at halftime. Indiana trailed Indianapolis by 2 at halftime of those exhibition games over the weekend. But there's not this massive sense of panic from those teams and from those fan bases. They certainly weren't happy about that, but those teams were both able to go on and win by like 22, 23 points each. But you can kind of take the long view of, okay, these are competent programs. People aren't the happiest with Calipari right now, but at the end of the day, they aren't worried about them losing a bunch of games to, cupcake teams, to where you can say, okay, you're putting a lot of new guys together. It's clearly taking some time. Wasn't ideal of a start, but they got their crap together. Whatever, you can move on. When you go 4-28 last year, you don't get that luxury. You just don't. And that's where you look at and you say there needed to be more of a sense of urgency going into that game for Kentucky Wesleyan. So kind of what I look at now is another, I kind of want to compare it to Kentucky again, because you're talking about, we've brought up the talent quote and all that stuff. One of the things that has surprised me more than a lot has surprised me throughout the last couple of years, but I know Louisville fans aren't going to like the name I bring up, but you watch John Calipari pressers. When Kentucky struggles, what happens? Calipari deflects all the blame from the players and puts it on himself and says, I got to do a better job of putting these guys into better positions. Blame me, not, the 5-star freshmen that are 17, 18, 19 years old. With Kenny Payne coming from the Calipari coaching tree and obviously with the struggles Louisville's had, I find it interesting that instead of deflecting the blame off of the players, last year the big mantra was, we got to heal. I got to love them up. They've been through so much. But now it's become more of, we aren't talented. We aren't fighting. We aren't doing these stuff. And I feel like he's almost deflecting it away from himself and trying to put it on more of the players, which obviously the players deserve blame for, losing an exhibition game, for going 4-28. By the end of the day, anything that you criticize the players for in college basketball comes back to the head coach. And that's the one that's getting the final judge, jury, and, to hit the gavel. I'm butchering the saying, but the judge, jury, and the executioner, there we go. To where I kind of find it surprising. I don't think it serves anyone well for Kenny Payne to be pushing the blame more onto the players. And I feel like it's putting even extra pressure and extra blame, and probably isn't setting a great tone for where things are. And Coach, you can speak this probably better than I can, as you've been in those locker rooms before. And I know Rick Pitino is as much of a negative enforcer as anyone, and he did brilliant work with that. But I look at it, and for all that's gone wrong, I think Kenny Payne probably needs to take more responsibility for what's happened throughout multiple years now with this. It's not just the same group of guys each time.
Well, I also think, and Jeff knows this, there's times in that setting, it's almost like a default that Coach Payne goes to. And I really think, if you look back, I don't take a lot of stock in press conferences, especially for new coaches who haven't done it. And you have the Caliparis, you have the Rick Pittinos of the world, who understand what they're supposed to be saying and how to, no matter what they're saying behind closed doors to their team, and they're ripping everybody from coaches to players and so on. It might come out and Coach Pitino saying, yeah, it's good that we lost. Now, he's not saying the same thing to his team and to his players and his coaches. For Coach Payne, that hasn't been something that he understands. And I don't think, it's almost where I don't even want to say out of body experience. He's just going to some of the coaches speak. And at times, I'm sure if he reflects back on it, he'd say, I wish I could have said this, that, or the other. So yeah, it's not a good look. He hasn't embraced and hasn't been enamored the fan base with what he said in the press conferences. But I think, it's certainly, as coaches, yeah, you want him to step up there and say, yeah, this is on me. And I get that. I've been there. I've had those conferences. Yeah, I've said it. Look, this is my fault, and so on. Behind closed doors, I'm going to show film and say, look, these are the things we have to get better at. This is where we're screwing up. We have to do this better. If not, you will not see the floor. This is unacceptable. This is not who we are. We will not allow this. This will not happen. And so, it's just the way of the world right now for and especially for Coach Payne. So, Jeff, yeah, I just think he's not it's his first head coaching job, first time he's had to do this, and he's dealing with losses and frustration, and he's saying things that he thinks is going to kind of spin it in a way that's favorable, and it's kind of doing the opposite.
If you talk to guys who have had this role since Rick Pitino, if you talk to David Padgett and Mike Pegues in interim roles, if you talk to obviously Chris Mack, and Chris was the one who would say it quite often, was there's way more to this job than I think people realize. And I that's not to say that other big time jobs in college basketball that outside of the Kansas, Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina realm. Okay. And you throw Indiana in there, obviously in our region. And with the history there's so much pressure in a small, finite number of jobs in the country. And when you get in those doors, when you walk in those doors, you pull the famous joke of like, one day you're wearing one team's polo, the next day you put on your new polo and you're with that team. Right. But when you walk in those doors and you are the head coach, it's a whole different deal. And I think that's a very hard adjustment for people who in previous walks of life, whether that's an NBA assistant, being one of the top assistants at UK, it's a very different role to have to be the one who is speaking on behalf of the program. And so, I think there's an element of a learning experience for Kenny Payne. And unfortunately for him, I think it's a steep learning experience. And I don't know that he has a whole lot of time left to show that he's learning and growing versus just like, okay, it's either sink or swim time. But what I would just say about it is he painted himself into a tough corner here because all of last year it was my team's not talented enough. And we're losing a lot of these games because of that. So then in the offseason, the conversation was they went out and basically revamped the roster. Well, now this is a roster that you put together fully through a full offseason, and you can't use that same argument anymore because we look at some of the names on this list, and I do think there's some talent here that is an upgrade from last year.
I think that,
and that's a problem.
Jeff, I think that the talent upgrade. Yeah, there's enough talent here to win some basketball games for sure.
And I'll add just this last point. I agree with everything you guys are saying. And obviously, like the talent comment from Monday night, like that's pure coach speak and people got all riled up about it. But like that's a very classic coach speak thing to say. But you're the head coach at the University of Louisville. You don't get that runway to learn and grow into the job. And it's not, our fault that Kenny Payne had never been a head coach before.
Right.
So where he, if you were at a DePaul or a mid-major job, you get to learn and grow into that. But I'm sorry, it's Louisville. It's supposed to be one of the 7-8 best jobs in the country. You don't get that runway to figure things out. You got to get on it and go. So I know we've already gone long, a little bit longer than we wanted to. So I apologize for that. But one very last thing before we get out of here, we'll go lightning round style quickly here. I could not do this podcast right before the start of the college basketball season and not get a Final Four pick out of you guys. So,
Mark, go ahead, Mark.
Oh man, listen. Right before, and again, I'm gonna toot my own horn. As we were winding down the season last year, I picked San Diego State to go to the Final Four, and UConn to go to the Final Four.
There we go.
That was last year. So like this year, I need to see. Jack, I'm sorry. I need to see that first week of the season. I want to see where teams are at with certain things, and I'm sorry. I let me see. And I'm just doing this off the top of my head. I love Kansas. I think they're built to win. I think Purdue is going to have the redemption story. I don't know if their guards are. For me, to win an NCAA championship, you got to have at least one or two pros. Even when Virginia, won it, they had DeAndre Hunter. They had some other guys, guys who had a cup of coffee, their guards who made the NBA. I don't know if Purdue has enough to get there and maybe to win it. They're talented, but to me, you got to have one or two NBA players to really have a shot at it. But give me Kansas and Purdue to make it to the Final Four. How's that? I'll take chalk.
All right. Well, we'll circle back around in a couple weeks for you, then, Coach. We're not letting you off the hook that
Thank
easily,
you.
but
Thank you.
But Jeff,
Sorry,
who you want? No, you're all good.
No, I love it. I'll be fast. I think I'm just looking at some thoughts that I've previously written down.
I could go quickly if because I got
I'll tell you. I'm with you. I think Kansas is kind of the Kansas is the one that I kind of pen in. I mean, obviously, it takes a lot to get to the Final Four. It's really hard to win 4 games in the NCAA tournament to get there. So it's crazy to say that I would pen anybody in, but I'm going to say Kansas. I think Purdue gets there this year. I'll throw in a team that this is probably a pretty it's not make or break, but it's a significant year for Hubert Davis, but I really like North Carolina.
Interesting.
And then I'm going to throw in another one that I thought was a team that was good enough to go to the Final Four after watching them quite a bit last year randomly. But I like Arizona. So I got Kansas, Arizona, North Carolina. Why don't we throw in one of the I'll throw in Purdue. I feel like maybe Purdue or Houston can get to the Final Four this year. I realize those are all like top 3 teams.
Because I always think like I want a couple of the top teams, and you kind of got to go down low, just kind of take a couple shots and see how it goes off. So I'm leaving Kansas out just because I'm not sold on the perimeter shooting. If they can hit enough shots in tournament games to be able to, and obviously I think they're going to be great. They're probably going to be a 1 or 2 seed, but at the end of the day, you got to hit shots to win games in March. I am going to go Duke. That they haven't been mentioned yet.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
Yeah, Philip Alski's back. Proctor's back. I think they're going to be really good. Michigan State, they bring everyone back. I love their guard play. Cohen Carr is absolutely electric already. And then I'll take kind of 2 shots here with as we lost coach there, but
that's
with
right.
with Arkansas, who I was very impressed with in their exhibition win over Purdue. If Musselman's already got them rolling, I that could be really scary. And then I'll take Villanova with all the talent that they have.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
Shouts
you gotta take
Kyle
shots.
Neptune. Wow.
Yeah, you got to take shots. They got a lot of talent on that roster. So
wait, Jack, so who wins the ACC then? If is Duke your ACC winner?
Duke goes farther in the tournament, but they don't win the ACC.
Okay, so who wins the ACC?
I have no idea if it's not Duke. That's the issue I'm having.
I mean,
like I kind of have to pick Duke by default, but I guess Miami. I can go Miami to win the ACC.
Miami, okay, that's a good choice. I do like Miami. I was a little concerned in doing my I worked on the Lindy's preseason magazine together and got a little concerned about Virginia, but then I started to read a little bit more about them and felt like maybe the computers are not giving them enough love. I mean, obviously having a great head coach will help you in that regard. So you got to think they're contenders. I don't know what it is, but I mean, I could point to a few things. I just really like North Carolina, and maybe I'll be way off on that. But I just feel like there is a bounce back in there for a program that's just too good to not consistently be among the best in the country.
I think there's a little bit of addition by subtraction there without Caleb Love. I think RJ Davis,
who is ironically on one of the teams that I just picked to go.
Yeah, you have the Caleb Love Bowl there.
Yeah, that would
there
be good.
In Phoenix, but I think obviously you get Baycott back there again. I just think they're kind of in a prove it mode for me. Where, you know, I've watched Hubert Davis for 2 seasons now, and outside of one miracle run in March, they haven't been good. So to me, they need to prove it to where, or they need to show me they're legit before I trust them to make the NCAA tournament, but do absolutely anything once they get into the NCAA tournament. I think they're going to make the NCAA tournament.
But yeah, I mean, hey, you can't win the NCAA tournament or be in the Final Four if you don't make it.
That being said, this is something that Mark and I will get into more as the season goes along. I do think the ACC is going to be a bit better this year.
It's going to be solid.
It's still pretty bare at the bottom, but I do think you're starting to see that top kind of replenish itself, especially with Duke and Miami up top, Virginia, as you mentioned. And if Carolina can bounce back also, I think, that could form a pretty solid top 4, which is something the ACC hasn't had the last few years.
Jack, here's a last shout for you. Okay.
Yeah.
The very last comment, and obviously this will change once we start uploading your new shows here. But the very last comment on Floyd Street's Finest is that there's not enough Pitt talk on a Louisville men's basketball podcast. So that makes no sense. But Pitt basketball this year, do you think they make the NCAA tournament?
They did last year, and they bring back Federico. Why not?
Why not? Okay.
Why not?
I don't think they will, but I'm hopeful.
Fair enough.
We'll see.
Fair enough. Anyways, thanks so much for tuning in. Floyd Street's Finest. Mark and I will be back next week. Jeff, thanks so much for the time this week. Looking forward to it all season long. Federico